Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of the show. We got a special show here for you today, which we announced recently, and I'm joined in the co-captain's chair by Mr. Butch Jones. Bourboning as always. Bourboning here on a Tuesday night. I am watering once again. That's what I do well. But today we're going to talk all about, and trust me when I tell you this is not an easy thing to do. It's all about our favorite guitar riffs, those opening guitar riffs in hard rock and heavy metal songs that absolutely kick our asses, that we love so much. Yeah. Butch and I were joking off camera about how we could have easily done 30 or 50. He originally we kind of said 5. Then I was like, no, let's do 10. And Butch is like, oh, but we're not doing 5. I whittle it down to 5. And I'm like, no, I can't whittle my list down anymore. So he added 5 more back. So now we got 10.
Yes.
Will we do a follow-up? Potentially.
Probably.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes, because I mean, I could easily, probably an hour after we shoot this, put another 10 together, but We'll see how it goes. We'll see how you guys like it. We'll see what the comments are like, and maybe we'll do another one. But again, the criteria here is hard rock and metal songs that have an opening guitar riff that's like the main riff of the song that we absolutely love to death. And in some cases, some of these guys playing it might be some of our favorite players. Maybe not. Maybe we just like the riff. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm going to have, and these are not necessarily in any real order. I don't think. They're just,
Maybe
these
the
are
top
10
ones.
of our favorites, right? Yeah, exactly. So I'll have Butch kick us off with his first selection or number 10, whatever, however we want.
This was a add back to my list, because we're doing 10, and I could never forget this guy. Love him to death. I'm actually don't know which one I want to do between the two, but I'm gonna go with Dime. Start with Dimebag from Pantera, because still trying to get this down so everyone can see. It's a simple riff, but the riff and walk, because the riff and walk makes you want to kill shit. And once you want to break things, get in a fight, it pumps you up for anything. Used to listen to this before we played hockey and some of my teams back in the day. It just fires you up, and that to me is what an opening riff is supposed to do. It's like, ooh. And that's a great one from Pantera. Dimebag Darrell, the intro to Walk, great riff.
Yes. And that guy's got a million of them.
Yes, he does.
And I will say, I wasn't even going to reveal this, but I'm going to do it because you just mentioned him. I had one of his as my number 10, and then literally right before we got on the Zoom, I thought something else came into my brain. I'm like, oh, there is no way I cannot leave that song off. So I said, Dime, you got to take a back seat to maybe episode number 2. So I'm not even going to say which song it was, but you will see Pantera. If we do a part 2 of this, you will see.
Okay.
But the song that actually wound up slipping at the last minute, at the 11th hour into my list, is The Well of Souls by the Mighty Candlemass from the Nightfall album, which, and I'm assuming it's Matt Bjorkman is the one, or Mats Bjorkman, I gotta say the damn name right, who plays the rhythm guitar in the band, probably created that riff. Lars Johansson does the lead guitar, but man, that song is so freaking heavy. And it's like, I remember the first time I heard this album and that song came on, I was like, oh my God, The Well of Souls, absolutely incredible. It's just massive beyond belief. And so yeah, that's my number 10, The Well of Souls.
Okay.
By Candlemass.
So number 9 for me, I've talked about this album before. I've talked about this album since 1982, quite a lot. The intro to Assault Attack. Again, you hear that and it's just like, oh, it's fucking on.
Yep.
That's it. Again, it's not a hard riff. It's a classic riff. You just hear that and it's just like, and then Bonnet comes in. It's like, oh God damn. What a way to introduce a record with a new band. Graham's in the band now, and now you got Glenn, Chris Glenn and Ted McKenna. Man, I talked about this album before. I remember seeing it in Record World back in the day. Always saw it, and I didn't buy it. I finally got it because every time you saw it, just him with the flying V up there and the lava, it's just like, this looks cool. To hear that intro riff, and you never heard anything on it before, it's like, yeah, it just isn't letting me down. So I love that.
Yeah, because you know what? I mean, without talking about the UFO, obviously, but like the first two Schenker albums, that first album is pretty loaded with riffs. I would say the second album is a little less riffy and more musical, I think.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then he kind of got back to the riffy thing on that album, I think.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
Built to Destroy, that's a whole other, yeah,
Yep.
not a lot of memorable riffs on that album.
No.
The damn phone always rings at the wrong freaking time, I tell you. And it's always junk calls, right? It's like
Of
spam
course.
calls. Never ends, never ends. Anyway, all right. So my next choice is from a band that has a million of these kind of riffs, and the guy who played these riffs is probably one of the unsung heavy rock guys of the 70s, and the band also are like were so important, I think, looking back on the scene in the early mid 70s, talking about that whole proto metal movement, right? But of course, they came from a place that really wasn't known for pumping out heavy bands. Their music is not really commercial or anything like that. I'm talking about Budgie, Tony Borge, In for the Kill, the title track. I love this song, and I love that just steamrolling riff. I mean, he does that bend in the beginning, and then dun dun wow dun 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 dun. It's just like this chugorama thing that just never ends, and it's just like, yep, I love it. Take me along for the ride. I'm going. So I could have picked so many Budgie songs, but that is probably my favorite riff out of all of them. But there are so many, and again, I've said it a million times on this channel. If you love heavy music and you have never listened to Budgie, what are you waiting for? Do it immediately. Yep. They are so amazing.
And you know what? I got to piggyback off of that, because I don't even, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I came across, maybe even 20 years ago at this point, I have a Van Halen bootleg from 75 at the Pasadena High in 75. And they do that. And I didn't know it was Budgie. I heard that. I'm like, what the? I was like, listen to Edward. And I had to actually look up. I put Van Halen In for the Kill, and then it came up. They originally done by Butch. I'm like, oh shit. And I mean, if you guys have never, I mean, I kid you not, you guys are starting to learn my Edward thing. If you've never heard Van Halen do the cover of Budgie's In for the Kill, go to YouTube and just put that in and sit back. You figure the first album for Van Halen was 78. So this is 75. He's a teenager still. On a cusp. He might have been 19 or 20.
Yeah.
And it's heavy as fuck. And he crushes. And then you go listen to, like, for me, the first time I actually listened to the Budgie one, it's like, oh, he didn't really change it. I thought he just made it super heavy. It was super heavy to start with.
Super heavy. And here's something else too. Just think about how kind of obscure Budgie always was. The fact that Eddie was listening to Budgie, because I mean, 74, this came out. So that was recorded, was from 75, even 76. Kind of cool that they're listening to stuff like that.
Right? And David Lee Roth actually talks about that. He introduces it on a different one, because when I first heard was cut off, it was just the song. And then I found the longer full show of that show. And he introduces the talking, asking, has anyone ever heard of Budgie? And he explains what a Budgie is and all this kind of stuff. And he talks about, this great band from England, and no one knows them over here, and it's a shame because they're awesome. And it's like, holy shit. So they were ahead of it, man.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk a lot about, in fact, we talked about it last night on the Hudson Valley Squares. We talk a lot about going back in that time machine and being able to go back in time to experience like some, live shows and stuff like that. I would have loved to have seen Budgie and Priest touring together, because they did quite a bit very early in Priest's career. Them and Budgie played shows all over Europe together. Yeah, imagine that. Oh, man. Imagine that.
With Les Binks.
Yes.
My man.
Yes, indeed. All right, back to you.
So number 8.
Number 8.
Some of my picks, I think, as I go along with anyone that's been watching the channel and seeing me or Facebook and knows me a little bit, you kind of will see some of these come in, and some other ones you might not. But to me, they're all kind of, I would expect them from me.
Yeah, I don't think I have a hell of a lot of surprises either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, the guitar player is definitely not a surprise. You might not expect me to use this song or this on my list here, but God knows I love me some George Lynch.
Yep.
The last song on Tooth and Nail, Turn on the Action. That riff, oh my God. Again, back to remember the first time having this on this vinyl right here in 1984 and hearing that riff. I mean, that whole record, that's my favorite Dokken record.
Oh, there's a ton of great riffs on that album. Yeah, absolutely.
But man, he gets to that. It's like, oof, what a way to end the record. And so, yeah, that's easily my number. Yeah, I love Turn on the Action.
That's
George Lynch.
The title track is one of my favorites from him ever.
Absolutely. I could have easily used that.
Yeah. That's what when you pulled that out, I thought that's what you were going to go with. Yeah, great. All right, my number 8. So I mentioned Judas Priest before. Got to have them on this list, and I'm going to go to a kind of a more obscure song by them, which they resurrected and played live recently. Saints in Hell from my beloved Stained Class. I love the evilness of Saints in Hell. I think it's you look at the lyrical content of that song, the title of the song, and then that riff, it just all goes together. Man, when they played this live, God, was it 2 years ago now already? Probably. I was in my glory because I had never heard them play that live before. And
I think it was 3. I think it was
probably right
now.
Because that tour was so long. I saw them 3 times on that tour.
Yeah.
And and every show was a different set list, and they had a different opener every time. So Saints in Hell. I had to have some Priest because they got a ton of really good riffs. But that may even be my favorite Priest song, and it's definitely my favorite riff. But they got so many of them. But yeah.
I had a Priest song from the same year, but a different album. It didn't make my top 10, but I'll definitely mention it later for sure if I remember. But yeah, you're right. There's so many great riffs, especially of that 70s period. Jesus.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So number 7 for me, an album that is I often call my number 2 album of all time. Depending on when I have to talk about it, I might say it's my 1B, because 1A, number 1 is always going to be, so I have to share it sometimes. From Rainbow Rising, one of the greatest rock albums, metal albums ever recorded. But what songs are you going to pick from this? Starstruck. The riff
that is a great riff, yeah.
Oh, again, fucking Blackmore.
A little cozier on the back.
Yeah, I was going to say, and if anyone's waiting for me to say Cozy fucking Powell, absolutely. That's, oh my God, that record is just, I think it's a perfect record. It really, I mean, there's a couple of songs that everyone kind of says are fillers, but 6 songs of greatness.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites of all time. Yeah, that's a good one. I think most people would expect something else, another pick, but that is a great riff, really good riff. And it's a shame they didn't play that song live.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
because it's really accessible. I mean, it's very like upbeat and catchy and whatnot.
You know, Dio used to do it in a medley with Viv, which was cool.
Yeah, I guess Blackmore was not big on it afterwards. I don't know. You know Richie, how picky he is, right?
God, he wasn't so great, man. You got to work with a lot of shit because he was so awesome.
I know. I mean, he's my man, but I will freely admit that maybe not the best human being on the planet, right? So, I don't know.
He's a little quirky.
He is a little quirky. I still love him, though.
Absolutely, you have to.
Speaking of a guy I love, yeah, I mean, to me, this is one of the, and again, if we were really being true and ranking these, this is probably a top 3 riff for me. I just absolutely love it. It's fun to play. It's amazing to listen to when you see him play it live. He injects as much kind of vigor into playing it now as he probably did 40 some odd years ago. Talking about a little rock bottom from UFO's Phenomenon album. I just love that riff. I mean, everybody always kind of talks about the solo in that song, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And of course, you got to make sure you listen to it from Strangers in the Night, which is absolutely amazing. But I just love that opening riff, man. It just absolutely kills me. It's so catchy. It's so cool. And it's so Schenker.
Mm-hmm.
So shocking.
Yep.
That's my number 7.
Yes, sir. Well, here's another one of my guys that I have loved since 1984. I always talk about his guitar tone. I gravitate towards guitar players that have a unique and individual tone, not something you just kind of plug in and it's there. I always like guys that created their tone, whether from pedals or having the amp modified to do whatever, but something that you hear a note and you're like, oh, that's the guy. So my man Ryan Latigro,
wow,
TNT, God damn the riff to Ready to Leave. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh my God. See, to me, this is what this is all about. It makes me happy just talking about it and just hearing that riff in my head. It makes me smile. It's like, oh my God.
Well, the geek out moment there, Butch.
Oh my God. It's one of those, to me, I have these songs that if I hear it, like I always have my music on shuffle. And if that's one of them, if that song comes up on shuffle, I'm going to listen to it 3-4 times in a row because it just makes me giddy hearing that riff. And just Latigro with that machine gun picking.
Oh, yeah.
He's that guy. It bothers me that he is not spoken about with the way the other 80s guys are. And, TNT never got, to that level, which is why. But still, Latigro, my God, such an individual.
Yeah, he doesn't. Nobody sounds like him. He always was very unique. Saying, him and Adrian Vandenberg kind of came up around the same time, and both have a pretty unique sound. But I think more so Ronnie than Adrian. I think Adrian kind of came from that Schenker school a little bit.
Yeah.
But man, Ronnie, where did he come from besides Mars?
My God, that I mean, and that's
that album.
New Thunder is their second record, but it's the first with English lyrics.
Yeah.
And the first one, Tony Harnell as well. Like, man, I'm Ready to Leave. My God, when this is over, I'm going to have. I should have saved that for number 1. When we're over, I have to listen to that song again because I just have it in my head now. That riff, I just love it.
I haven't listened to that album in a while, so I may have to do that as well. That's a good choice. I didn't expect that one. That's a good one. All right, so I'm going to talk about one of Butch's guys right now. He's one of mine as well, and I knew I had to have him on this list. I kind of struggled which song I was going to have, representing him. And then I narrowed it down to the album and I was like, all right, God, this album is chock full of cranking riffs that I love. But then I was like, well, you know what? One of the ones I like the most is probably the most simple one he's ever done. But I tell you what, in anybody else's hands, it might not have sounded as interesting, but in the hands of John Sykes, it's so simple, but who gives a fuck? Children from the Whitesnake album, it's so like metallic and so like in your face ballsy. And I'm like, I could have picked almost any song from this album. And I knew it was going to come from this album. And I was like, wow, I love Still of the Night, Crying in the Rain. I'm like, but you know what? I'm going to go for the most basic one that when you put it on, it's just like, it's instant, like smash your head against the wall type of riff. I just love it. As simple as it is, probably the easiest riff to play out of my whole list, but who cares? It's still one of the coolest. And of course, John Sykes is one of the riff masters of all time.
You didn't say the name of the song.
What's that?
You didn't say the name of the song. You just sang the riff.
Didn't I? Children of the Night. I thought I said it. No?
Oh, I mean, of course I knew it.
Oh, I know you know it. Okay, sorry. Yeah, Children of the Night off the Whitesnake album, the 87 album. So, yeah.
And if anyone's wondering out there, we do not talk ahead of time of what our picks are. So, which is a lot of fun because I don't know when. So, as soon as you said my guy, I knew who he was talking about, but I had no idea what song or what album or anything. So, that's really cool.
A lot to choose from, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. See, and guys, I did not say his name. He said it. It wasn't me this time. Although he might show up still, but I didn't say it first. So
that's right. That's right.
So my next, I have, I'm not going to do him first because, but I've said for a long time, I think that this riff, I think is the greatest riff in hard rock history. And that's a bold statement, I know. And a lot of you probably don't even know this song, which is a shame. His live album, I have said, I have 4 live albums. I have 4 live albums that I say that I kind of have a a 4-way tie for my favorite live albums of all time. And no one ever talked. Well, I know you talk about this guy too, because you love the live album too. But Pat Travers, Crash and Burn, has the song that was on the radio a lot back in the day called Snort and Whiskey. That riff is the quintessential bad fucking ass riff. Went a little land, oh my God. And fucking Pat Thrall's on it. And I love the shit out of Pat Thrall. I'm probably never going to get a chance to see him because he hasn't played with anybody in years. He's got a studio in Vegas. But man, if Pat Thrall comes across his video, God damn it, do I fucking love you. But that riff on Crash and Burn for Snort and Whiskey is just oh my God. It's just like,
you know, it's funny. Yes, that is one of the greatest riffs of all time. And even though he's a Canadian, it's like one of the badasses American riffs ever, right? Because it just screams like USA, right? It's just
attitude. I mean, that's what I wanted to say when you said the Sykes thing. Anything Sykes does is just pure attitude, you know, which is one of the reasons I love him so much. But yes, absolutely. That is an American riff right there. You know, he's lived in Florida for a long, long time. So I guess he's kind of American.
Yeah.
But man, yeah. What's that record? 1980 is that record.
Yeah.
And
great guitar.
If you don't know Snort and Whiskey, please check that song out. That riff is just complete badass. And Tommy Aldridge is on it too.
That's right. That's right. Mr. Mars Cowling. That's one of the greatest live bands of all time. Not that I got to see them, but you know, I mean, talented band.
Yeah, I've said forever, man. They might have had the top 3 best bands of the late 70s, 78, 79, 80, those 3 years. The Pat Travers band was off the charts. Pat Travers, Pat Thrall, Mars Cowling, Tommy Aldridge.
Doesn't get much better than that.
If you've never heard the album Pat Travers Live, Go For What You Know. That's another thing. You guys got some homework this week. That's, my God.
Yeah, that's good
Brilliant.
Stuff. And Pat's got a bunch of really good riffs too. A lot of those early albums, man. Oof.
Absolutely.
All right. Anybody who knows me knows my love for this album. And this was, you know, again, when I was putting this list together, this was one of those no-brainer choices. A lot of really good riffs on this album and the albums before it and the album after it. But when it all comes down to it, Mr. Chris Oliva, a little Hall of the Mountain King.
I didn't see that coming.
Love it. I mean, I miss this guy so much, and what a great player. What a great riff guy. The guy could solo with anybody, and man, I just love this album to death.
Perfect. And his tone.
Oh yeah, another one of those guys that's really sounded different, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, unique tone.
Yep, absolutely. Another unique guy that is much missed. But to me, this is one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. And I've thought that since, ironically enough, my last 2 choices came out right at the same time. I didn't plan that, but that's my probably 2 favorite albums from 1987 right there. It doesn't get much better than that.
That's a great Chris Oliva. Absolutely. He was a riff meister. And you know, and he has a great tone on that, but I always gravitate to Power of the Night. I love the tone on that a little bit better. It's the same but different. On Mountain King is thick, great tone though. But man, yeah, that's I did not see that coming. That's a great pick. I love Chris Lee. That's awesome. Good pick. Can you guys tell that I'm sweating on these? This is it hurts. I'm telling you. I don't know why he keeps asking me to do these things. It hurts me every time.
Hey, this one was your idea, buddy. Don't blame it on me.
Yeah, I know it was too, wasn't it?
I was happy to do it, but I was like, oh, this is not gonna be easy.
I gotta do this one first. Okay. And I'm gonna cheat in here too. I'm gonna pull a Pete Pardo in a little bit and cheat a little bit. Right. What number are we up to?
Number 4.
Number 4. Well, I'm not cheating yet, but you knew Lizzie was going to show up somewhere. I had thought about Ballad of a Hard Man because I love that Gorham riff. That is a really cool riff from the Fighting record. But come on. Now I'm saying John Sykes. How can anyone that knows Thin Lizzy's Thunder and Lightning, the last studio record that they did, the first song on the record is Thunder and Lightning. That riff that starts the song, that starts the album, that's the last album that they ever did. So it's a whole lot of things going on in that one song. But you want to talk about a way to go out on top, is to start with that song and that riff. And for me, again, the Sykes thing, the riff it's like it's the cake, and the frosting is coming on each track. But god damn, that riff starts, and then Gorham does his solo, and then there's the keyboard solo with Darren Wharton, and then they set the tension builds and builds and builds, and they
Sykes explodes.
They unleash John Sykes to the fucking world, and he goes ballistic. And that, oh my god. Anyone that does not understand why I love John Sykes so much, that one song might give you the best clue of it, the best information, and the best. Oh my god.
You know what? When I was looking to pick something by him, and had this, you know what the other album I had was that Thin Lizzy album. So I was like, because I was thinking about that. I was thinking about Cold Sweat, which I love too, which is a killer riff.
Great riff.
I'm glad I actually went with my choice, because then we both could have something different here. But yeah.
And Cold Sweat, ironically, that's the only song that Sykes co-wrote on that record. So even though he didn't write that riff, that riff it just sets up the beginning and end of the career. And so that's just that means so much to me. That's just a great one.
It's funny because at the time, not a lot of guys, that's some shredding there. Not a lot of guys were doing that kind of shredding on a Les Paul back in the day. Usually, Gary Moore did a little bit, but Moore went back and forth between Strats and all sorts of other stuff. But Sykes was always on a Les Paul. And it's like most of the guys you heard playing like that were playing Strats.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely.
That's a good choice. Yeah, I knew that was coming at some point. All right. Well, everybody's probably waiting. It's like, well, Pete, where's the damn Sabbath pick, right? Yeah. This was the hardest for me to do on this entire list, because I love Sabbath to death, and Iommi is one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and he's the greatest riff master of all time, in my opinion. And there are so many opening riffs that I love from this guy. So many. I literally had like 15 songs that I had earmarked that I was trying to choose from. And my pick today, if you ask me next week, will probably change. But for today, I decided to go with Hole in the Sky from the Sabotage album, which I love. I also was thinking about Symptom in the Universe. I also had Supernaut on my list. I had all these songs, and I'm like, God, they all rule. But I decided to go with Hole in the Sky today, which I think is one of his most underrated riffs from this time period. So that's what I decided to go with. Hole in the Sky from Black Sabbath on Sabotage.
If anyone hasn't heard Pantera's version of that with Dime crushes that as well. I love that riff.
Big fan, right? Yep.
Yes, sir. Well, 3, right? No, 4. 3? Okay.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
This honestly is probably number 1, but I have to not make it number 1 in this thing. And just looking at this cover just always makes me smile. And just, again, 1983, just like Lizzie's Thunder and Lightning. But Vin Campbell, again, Unleashed to the World, Stand Up and Shout, the first notes you hear from him. And that album completely changed my life. As 15 years old and getting that record, I remember like it was yesterday, putting that vinyl on and hearing that riff for the first time and just being like, what the fuck is this? Holy shit. And, and I could hear the Gary Moore stuff, isms in there, which, he never, especially when he was young, he didn't hide it. It was Gary Moore just on steroids in the younger version. But man, Stand Up and Shout, God damn it. To this day, man, that means so much. That riff is just...
Yeah, we were all blown away, man. That machine gun riffing, those fast solos with the screaming pinch harmonics. We were like, wow, this guy he's the real deal, right? Where'd they find this guy?
You know what? And 2 years ago, I've been very fortunate to meet Viv. I met him in '83 when I was 15. So meeting my guy at that time on that record, holy shit. But I got to tell him a couple of years ago, I got to walk up to him and tell him thank you for teaching me to pinch harmonics when I was 15. And he laughed and said, thank you, I appreciate it. He's like, but I learned him from Roy Gallagher. So I appreciate you telling me, but I got him from Roy Gallagher. So it was really cool. He's a great guy.
I'm assuming you were at that Mid-Hudson Civic Center show in the middle of the summer. So, I actually, I almost missed that show because my parents and we went down to the Jersey Shore for the week because that was on a Sunday or a Saturday.
Well, that I don't remember.
It had to have been either one because we were there all week and we came back on the weekend. So it was either Saturday or Sunday show, and I had tickets for the show at the Civic Center, and I got like the worst sunburn down at the shore. I was literally in so much pain and agony. I had the sweats, the cold sweats, all that kind of stuff. But I went to the show suffering, and I had floor seats, and that was such a great concert. See those guys there.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I had to pick this guy. I love him to death. He's maybe not known as a big riff dude, but man, he created one of the most memorable ones of all time with this song. From the Taken by Force album by the Scorpions, Julie John Roth, Sails of Sharon. I mean, it's perfect. It's such a cool one. It's so kind of wacky, almost like it doesn't make sense, but it does. And I think only a guy like him could create it, right? I mean, you listen to it, even when you like try to play, you're like, okay, this is like, you listen to it like, oh, that can't be too hard. Then you try to play it and you're like, wait a second, that's like kind of start back and forth.
It's all over the place.
It's so cool. It's so cool, but it's become like one of the most beloved songs from the band from this era. And I think a lot of it has to do with that riff, and then the solo comes in. It's just like, forget about it. But Sails of Sharon, my number 3.
So this is where I start to cheat. So number 2, now I got to figure out which one I want to do. So we're gonna Edward. Remember, not Eddie, Edward. Van Halen 1, Atomic Punk. Joe Guerrero right now is watching this saying, how did you not make this number 1? But anyone that knows this record, well, everyone knows this record at this point, but the first time that you heard that riff, and you're like, what the hell is that?
How was he doing that, right? Yeah.
And then, oh my God, you could hear like starting to feedback just right before it gets into the real riff. That feedback kind of, because it's so loud in the studio, and then he kicks it, and then, oh God. Oh God, I can't, I like, why do you make me do these things? I get too emotional. This is just, oh my God.
Again, I didn't pick this topic.
I know. I did it to myself, but goddamn Atomic Punk, that riff is just.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I mean, you could pick any song off that album, right? Or the second album.
Yep.
And the third album and the fourth album, right? I mean, that's just
absolutely textbooks.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff on there.
Yep.
So I'm waiting for a guy, and I'm hoping that he's your number 1. I've been waiting for a guy from you this whole list so far, and we'll see if you pull him for the.
I have a feeling who you're talking about, honestly, and if it's who I think it is, he didn't make the cut, which is a whole nother thing.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So.
Yeah.
But my number 2 guy is another, like, really, I think, underappreciated guy who created a ton of great riffs, because I think the band itself are not really thought of as a heavy band, but I think this guy brought the heaviness into the band. I'm talking about Martin Barr from Jethro Tull, and the song is "To Cry You a Song" from the Benefit album.
Wow.
It's a great riff. It's heavy, it's intricate, it's just so awesome. And again, I think one of their unsung classics in their catalog, the band like never played it. And it's a shame because it's one of their heaviest songs, and the riff just absolutely goes. It's just so awesome. It kind of like the Sails of Charon. It's kind of a weird, kind of like, circular, undulating riff, so to speak. But yeah, I love it to death. And I think he's just such a great guitar player. He's created some, everybody thinks of like Locomotive Breath and Aqualung, but he's got so many other great riffs in their catalog. But that might be my favorite from him.
And
So.
you know what? And we use that term, underrated guitarist, so much. And he really is in that really small window of someone that really deserves that title.
Yeah.
He never gets talked about.
And you got to wonder, because the focus of that band is always Ian Anderson, right?
Yeah.
He is one of the greats. I mean, it's like, I know I might upset a lot of people here, but he's a guy, in my opinion, who deserves to be ranked up there with and talked about in the same breath as guys like Page and Clapton and all those dudes, because he's just as good, in my opinion.
And he's a contemporary with those guys too. He was right there doing the stuff at the same time. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great pick.
Thank you.
This is where I cheat and pull my Pete Pardo, because I have to, because otherwise I'll combust like Stumpy Peeps from Spinal Tap. Now, so literally, this really is my number one, but I'm going to make it number two, even though this is number one. So I have a 1A and a 1B. So this is how I'm cheating, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't get this in, so I have to do this. So my 1B is from my favorite album of all time, which is Van Halen 2. My favorite song from Van Halen, which could possibly be my favorite song of all time as well, Light Up the Sky. Again, talk about the tension and how, and on vinyl, the first song on side 2, you put that needle on, and I got this when I was 12 years old. This is my first Van Halen record, was Van Halen 2. I got it in 79 when I was 12 years old, and putting that needle on at my friend Eric Reimer's house. I remember forever. I'll always remember this moment, putting it on and hearing that. Oh, mind completely fucking blown. What the fuck is this? And then it kicks into the real riff.
Yep. Changing the game right there.
Changing the game. It was unbelievable. I didn't know what I was getting into when I got that album, when my mom bought me that album. I didn't know a song on it. I got it for my birthday in May of 79. But to this day, since May of 1979, I got that album and UFO Strangers in the Night the same day. Complete 12-year-old kid's mind altered. And I swear on my mom, there has not been a month since May of 1979 that I have not heard something from both of those two albums. So Van Halen 2 and UFO Strangers in the Night has not been a month since then that I haven't heard something from both of those records. Those are my two favorite records of all time. They completely changed my life.
Shit, you could have bought nothing else that entire year and just listened to those.
I would have been, absolutely. Having said that, that was
1A.
That's my 1B. So 1A has to be from the debut Van Halen record, the greatest riff. I still want to say Stand Up and Shout is the greatest riff, but the riff that nobody seems to ever play correctly. Phil X is a phenomenal guitar player, even though I don't like Bon Jovi. But Phil X is a great player, and I saw a video with him, and he said, it's like, yeah, I'm not playing that, because I'm not playing the beginning because no one plays it right. I'm the One. The opening riff, the I'm the One, is a complete shuffle, and everyone talks about Edward Van Halen's lead playing, and obviously that's on a whole nother stratosphere. But it was about his rhythm playing. If you go back and just not even listen to the solos, just listen to his rhythm playing, especially on I'm the One, that intro is off the fucking charts.
Yep.
The shuffle of that, God, it's any guitar players out there, go after you watch this, pick up your guitar and try to play that riff. and try to play it right the whole, and he does that, and that's the main riff. So he does that in the beginning, and then it continues on. So it's like it, and it, oh my god, see what you do? I get myself all fucking worked up. And honestly, because I've had all these bootlegs of Van Halen over all these years, when I first heard it, I didn't get it. But later on, after I got all the bootlegs, I realized because of the bootlegs, Van Halen used to do a lot of ZZ Top covers. I'm the One is ZZ Top. If you go back and you listen to it, it's like LaGrange sped up.
Sped up a bit, yeah.
And that's all. It's the shuffle of ZZ Top done by Edward Van Halen. But I'm telling you, that riff, man, is again another one that makes me giddy. Just talking about it makes me happy. Just hearing that riff in my head. But goddamn,
yeah, it's a great one. It's one of my favorites by him as well. I love it. Good choice. So before I get to my number one, I'm amazed that there's no Akira Takasaki on this list.
And that's not who I thought you were talking about, honestly. I thought you were talking about Trower.
Oh, okay.
Because, yeah, I mean, I Bridge of Sighs and Day of the Eagle, those are phenomenal riffs that easily could have been on here. But you know what, Akira, and I trust me, I figured you would say it or someone's going to say it in the comments. It's like, you always talk about Akira. And I do. But there's so many riffs, I couldn't really just pick one. There's
I mean, you know which one is my favorite? Well, I'll give it away. I was thinking about putting it on my list. From the Thunder in the East album, We Could Be Together. I'm like, what in the world? I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, say what? What was that?
Exactly.
It's like so fast and so perfect, and he's got all these little things he throws in there. I'm like, oh my, what are they drinking over there in Japan? Holy
Absolutely.
moly.
It's fucking Akira, man. You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
All right, my number one, probably this is not going to be a surprise. It wasn't a surprise to Butch either. This is the only one on my list he knew was going to be on the list. And again, it's not the most complex riff ever done.
Well, you know what though?
It's hard to play absolutely right though. Yeah,
exactly.
Because it's very unconventional.
Yes.
And there's a couple different ways to play it, but sometimes it doesn't quite sound the same. Yeah, you got to use the thumb, and otherwise it just doesn't come out right. And of course, I'm talking about "Burn" by Deep Purple, Mr. Blackamore, head of Blackamore. I will say my favorite version of it is on the Made in Europe album. I think it smokes on there. It's so crisp and heavy, and I like the way he kind of really gets back. He plays it all throughout the song, but there's a point like after the solo where he's getting back into the main riff, and then Ian Pace comes in with the drums, and you got Coverdale and Hughes whooping it up in the background, and then just Blackmore unleashes back into it again. It's like savage beyond belief. I just love it. I think, when you talk about riffs that open up a song and just totally set the tone for the entire rest of the piece, Burn is totally it. It's just so cool. Again, it's not flashy, but it's got mean intent, and that's what I love about it. So
and like Pete said, I figured he had to have a Blackmore song. So I said to him, I don't want to know your list, but I have to ask you this because I have this on my list. And I'm pretty sure you have it on yours. If you have it on yours, I'm taking it off of mine. And he's like, yep. I'm like, I knew it. But on top of that, the real point of this, at least for me, is this sets up the whole, what Mach is that? Three. So that's the whole Mark, I would say Mach, the Mark III version of Purple. And that's the first riff you fucking hear. With Hughes in the band and Coverdale, that's the first fucking riff that you hear from that fucking Burn. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know, right?
And Burn,
they come up with that, right? And they did it on the next album too, because Stormbringer's a hell of a riff too.
And okay, so I'm gonna say this right now, and all you guys can comment, just like I do with Sabbath. And Sabbath, I'm sorry, Mob Rules is my favorite Sabbath album of all time. I know the Ozzy stuff is great, blah, blah, blah. It was psychedelic and kind of had some filler stuff in there. Dio got in the band, like, we're not having no fucking filler. It's all fucking the shit. So Burn is my favorite Purple record. And
it's a top three for me. I mean, I love it. That's, I always give a slight edge to Mark II, but I absolutely love Mark III. I
Absolutely.
totally do.
Yep.
Totally do.
That's a brilliant one. That's just, again, makes me smile just talking to you about it. You know, that's just like,
it was hard trying to pick a Blackmore riff because I knew I had to. I had a couple others, and maybe I'll just save them for part 2. But I had a couple Rainbow riffs I was looking at. I had more than a few Deep Purple riffs, right? But I mean, when I really thought about it, I was like, it's got to be Burn.
Yeah,
it's got to be Burn. It's like one of my all-time favorite riffs, and it's just it's one of my all-time favorite songs from them.
absolutely.
You know, there's just so many good ones, but I just love the feel of it. It's just, you know, man, it gets you firing up when you hear the song, right? It's like,
and you know, and as we're talking about, I it's gonna bother me to actually admit this and say it out loud. I didn't even think about Gary Moore. And that's blasphemy for me, because End of the World, that riff right there, Rocking Every Night. Oh, I mean, that could have easily made my list. And like I said, I thought you were talking about Trower. So you add all the great Trower. I mean, we can make this a 5-hour show.
I know. So yeah. And I feel bad I didn't include any Thin Lizzy in mine, but I was looking at a whole bunch of them, and I was like, oh God. I mean, you know, like I almost had Bad Reputation on my list, and I because that's just so cool. I mean, it's just like,
Opium Trail.
Opium Trail is great. Yeah, there's so many good ones. So many good ones. Well, like I said, everybody, if you've enjoyed this episode, we will gladly do a part 2. And, you know, maybe we do more. I don't know, whatever. We'll see how it goes. But this is fun because I love talking about riffs and stuff, because I'm a big fan of riff bands and stuff, like, you know, bands that create guitar players who can create a cool riff. So I want to thank Butch for helping me out here and having a great conversation as always. So visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. Butch, you want to talk a little bit about the Facebook page?
Well, you guys can find me. I created a page on Facebook called The Butcher Shop. So just put The Butcher Shop in and look for groups, and it'll come right up. We're having a lot of fun. There's a lot of music conversation. Exactly what Pete and I were just doing. That's what goes on all day. People have jumped in and taken over, and I love it. So it's just a community of like-minded people having a good time talking about music. And John Sykes.
A lot of John Sykes. Maybe one of these days we'll find this, right?
I want to be the guy that brings John Sykes back to everyone. So this milk carton shit can stop, and Sykes is out there, and I can say, see, look, I had an itty-bitty little bit that had to do with get him back out into the world. So
all he's got to do is release the damn album, man. That's all we need. Put it out there, dude. Everybody's been waiting like decades for it.
Yes, please.
Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Put some of your favorite riffs down below in the comments section. And like I said, if you want it, we'll do a part 2 of this. And we'll see you all later on. For Butch Jones, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.